Hi, everyone. It's my very great pleasure today to introduce Alison Chester-Lambert to you, who has been a professional astrologer for the last 23 years, I think, Alison. Certainly has appeared many times on BBC television and radio, regular slots on Sky TV as well. So she's very, very well known in the media. She's published had five publications in total, including her very, very popular astrology reading cards. And the Daily Mail and Astro.com has regularly published her as well. And so, but as well as making astrology very, very accessible to people, she's also a serious researcher, very serious researcher, as evidenced by some of her books, with a degree, an MA, a Master of Arts in Cultural Astronomy and Astrology. So welcome, Alison. And the way I came across you, I haven't told you this, but the way I came across you, I think it was way back in 2020. I initially heard a webinar from Kelly Hunter on the Cosmic Intelligence Agency from Kelly Hunter. Very first time I'd heard about the dwarf planets, and I was absolutely electrified, and I had to find out more about them. So off I went researching, and the second main source of information I found was your book, Starry Messengers, which I absolutely devoured because there's some really profound research in here about the dwarf planets, and I still refer to it now. I absolutely loved it. So that's a real masterpiece. So thank you for that, which is how we finally came into contact, and we've arrived today. So welcome. It's great to have you with me.
Thank you. It's so fantastic to finally be here, Pam, and to talk to you. It's like a dream come true, really. It's just talking together about the things that we're so passionate about will just be such fun.
Yeah, well, there's so few astrologers working in this field that have a real in-depth understanding of the dwarf planets, and you are absolutely one of the pioneers. So
Yeah.
thank you for being here. So we've got some very big geometry, some very big configurations. If we just even take the dwarf planets and exclude what I call our bread and butter traditional planets. So what would you like me to do? Do you want me to initially share the chart you sent through, or would you like to talk a little bit at first?
Absolutely. I think that diagram of the trans-Neptunian planets is so revealing for everybody, because it's very hard to get our head around it, isn't it, really? These things so far out. So I think we should put that up and I'll just talk through that.
Yeah. So let me share that. Yeah. Everyone see that? Yes.
I'm just going to turn a light off. It's aggravating me. Right, there we go. This, I hope, will help people understand what's going on. So if we look down in the left-hand corner there, what you will see is the sun. So there's an orange glow. That's the sun.
Yeah.
And so the rest of it is supposed to be the orbital paths of planets coming out from the sun and going out into space, right, into the next galaxy. Okay, so the first planet that we've got there actually is Neptune, which actually now is our outermost proper planet, the one in the school books, because you can't put Pluto in the school books anymore. It's not a planet. So we've got there, Neptune is the furthest known planet. Now, look at this lot after Neptune. I mean, like, wow, this lot has all sprung up, and it's just so exciting. So we have the first strip. It says Plutinos at the top. There we can see we have Orcus and Vanth. So Orcus is the planet and Vanth is the moon, which is so large, it's almost like two planets. And then Pluto and Charon, again, a planet, a dwarf planet, again, a moon so large, it's almost, it's competition, which one was the moon and which one was the planet. And they're in an area of the sky called the Plutinos. And the discoverer of the dwarf planets asked that in this part of the sky, any planets that are found should be given the words or the names of a mythological underworld deity. So in doing that, he really helped us with astrology, which was why it was so sort of easy to get around these, because some guy came along and said, okay, well, if we find one here, it has to be an underworld deity. And if we find one here, it has to be a deity that creates or generates. And that's the next sector there, the next class, the classical Kuiper belt objects. So there you have to be a creator deity to get your name on a planet, okay? And underneath there, we can see we have Makemake from the South Pacific, Easter Island, and Haumea from Hawaii in the Pacific Ocean again. And Cilicia, who is actually a Roman goddess. And we'll talk about her later. And then underneath, the impossible to pronounce, Kwawa. Kwawa. What do you say?
Kwawa.
Kwawa.
I don't know if that's correct, but it's my best attempt, Kwawa.
I'm going to say Kwawa because otherwise it's going to look as if I've got hiccups every time I want to say it. Kwawa. There we go. And I'm going to talk a little bit about him later because he's in a T-square at the moment with Cilicia. And then we move on. We're getting further out now. We're getting right out, so nearly into outer space beyond the solar system. And there we've got this scattered disk area. So if you're disorderly and unstable, then you will finish up here.
They've got much longer orbits, Alison, haven't they? Around about 560 years as opposed to just under 300.
That's right, 500, imagine, yeah. And there we have Eris, definitely disorderly and unstable, and Gong Gong, the Chinese mythological character of Gong Gong. And then, unbelievable, going out further, you just can't get your head around this, 12,000 years to go around the sun. We've got another orbital path, which will take the Sednoids, is called the Sednoids. And so far we have one there, and that is Sedna, who is an Inuit goddess. So I think that will be helpful to people to realize that we don't just have this sun now with 8 planets that you see in the school textbooks. We've now got all this lot as well. And one of the great things about this, as far as I'm concerned, is that we don't really need anybody to tell us that change is coming or that we're in great flux or great change. We all know that anyway. But we do need an astrology to describe it. We need an astrology to help us through understanding it. So we have discovered these planets at a time when, yes, we're in great change, but we need to understand that change through these planets in astrology. They will help us understand it. So we can't really ignore them. And I don't think we can say, well, Mercury has meaning, that rock there, but that one over there, no, that has no meaning. I don't get that. If something has meaning, the rest of it has meaning. So that's why I think these guys are so important, and that we really do need to get our heads around them if we want to have some kind of understanding of the fabulous future.
Yeah, because we're moving into a much greater age of expansion. I mean, so many people can feel this expansion in our consciousness. And what I find fascinating, I mean, this is a beautiful chart, Alison. And what I find fascinating is we have to go via the underworld before, in distance, we get to the creator gods, the creator deities. However, does that also suggest not only a distance, but a process? That we have been, and we currently still are, for many of us, in the underworld. But the next step is what we're stepping onto right now, as described by these beautiful dwarf planets, Haumea, Cilicia, Makemake, and Kwawa, of creation. So does that describe the process as well as the distance?
Absolutely. That is such a great way to put it. I love this. So yes, we do have to go into the underworld to come out with ideas and buzzing with new stuff, or generating and starting again. So you get the death, if you want to call it that, and then the birth. Yeah. And I absolutely do get that. And that process, I mean, we know anyway, but it's worth repeating. This was the core of all the mystery schools in Greece. Everything was about the fact that we must accept these cycles where we're on the down bit of the wheel for a while, but then we'll come up. Everything has to go through a death for it to become a birth. When the leaves drop off the twigs in winter, they leave the bud for next year's twig behind them. So it's that promise, isn't it? So no, I think that's a great point that you made.
Yeah, beautiful. It's a sensational chart to really help people grasp the enormity of the expansion of consciousness that we're going through right now. Because I've often said in the videos, we've only been able to access these Kuiper belt objects because our consciousness has expanded enough to enable us to integrate them. So it's
We
like a
definitely,
marker. Yeah.
absolutely. We definitely don't discover the planet until we are ready for it, until our collective consciousness and our individual consciousness, excuse me, is ready for it.
Fabulous. Do you want me to leave this up, Alison, or do you want me to?
No, it's actually you can do. Why not?
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Just tell me when to stop sharing.
I suppose it would increase. People would be able to see me more if we took it off the screen. I don't know if
Yep.
that helps.
Yep.
Yeah, well, we'll take it off then.
Okay.
As I bothered to put makeup on, take it off. Okay, so we discussed earlier talking about the eclipses, and I love talking about eclipses because it gets into the press, everybody knows about them. So it's the one time that the astrologer actually gets the knock on the door or the phone call from whichever news station or radio and go, would you like to go on and talk about eclipses? And I always go, yes, that's great. However, obviously, it was a lot more astrology than just eclipses, but it is a way that these two eclipse charts are very interesting. And so it's a way for us to discuss everything just by entering these two charts. So it's such a thrill. Okay, so we've got a lunar eclipse to start with, and that is on the 25th of March, so close now, and lots of stuff being written about it. So I want to make the first point that we should let's get back to basics before we do any of this sort of highfalutin stuff. The eclipse is on an axis, and the axis is the Aries Libra axis. And this is the thing to understand. This underpins everything. So we're looking at two zodiac signs, which are on the cardinal cross. And so they are important in that they lead, they initiate, and they straddle the place where we have the equinox. Now, the equinox is where the days and the nights become the same length. And I just want to point out that the Egyptians worshipped the equinox. They absolutely thought it was fabulous. And if they got the sun and the moon rising, the sun setting or rising and the moon setting or rising opposite each other on the day of the equinox, this was the happiest, most glorious thing because the whole world was full of ma'at. It was in harmony and peace. So for us to get this lunar eclipse so close to the equinox, well, they would be very happy, the Egyptians. This would be considered a time of great harmony. So this is a good thing. Okay, so first of all, the sun is in Aries, and let's face it, this is a great place for the sun because we have a fire sign and we have a fire planet and they love being together. And so the energy right now is very much about spring. It's very much about things coming through and leaping forward and birds having a great time, etc. And that's all good. That's great. Now, in order for us to get a lunar eclipse, we have to have the moon on the other side. And so the moon is in Libra. And it's the moon that's going to be eclipsed. The most important thing about eclipses is that they're going to remove the power of anything that they touch or that they're involved with. So if the eclipse is going to happen to the moon in Libra, then the moon in Libra is going to lose its power, only for a short time, but it's like switching off a light switch. That this is what's going to happen. So the first thing is the sun is glorious. It is not being eclipsed. All of the strength is on the side of Aries in fire. And on the other side, Libra in air, we've got this moment where there is a disconnect. where the light of the sun is no longer falling on the moon as it should be. Now, the moon doesn't generate its own light, it can only receive light from the sun. And so, therefore, the moon's reflective capability, its ability to think things through, to pause, and to take on an emotional position is affected. And so, if you're a Libra sun sign, then you will notice that there is on that day a moment where you just feel disconnected. Literally, the light switch has just turned everything out. And okay, it's a moment for pause. It's a moment for correction, but it's not unusual. We do get sort of 4 to 6 eclipses, a year. So that's basically the effect, I think, on that side, on the Libran side. As far as the Aries side is concerned, fabulous. There's no problem over here, thanks. And there's quite a lot of planets on that side. We're very heavily weighted over towards Aries at the moment. So in terms of what does that mean for me and you, if I always talk about the world of one and the world of two. And so I'm thinking about the world of one, Aries, individual, independent, and the world of two, Libra. And I think that the stories and narratives will be about the world of one and the world of two. If you're in a relationship, then is it in some ways, does it go onto rocky ground, or do you get into a row or something? If you're not in a relationship and you're looking for one, is this the time that you find one? It's about change and something changing. And I think it's very much about relating and relationship. Now, we could find that just by being on the Aries Libra axis, but there's a little bit more to this because the asteroids are talking really loudly during this eclipse. We've got Vesta, which is very much about the world of one, about being focused to ourselves, in an aspect with Neptune. And Neptune is all about pining and longing and yearning for something. And so when these two get together, is Vesta happy, or is she pining and yearning? Is she happy to be on her own and independent, or does she think, I kind of would like to have someone? Even the birds get someone at this time of the year. And then we've also got Pallas Athena, committed to being single, is in a 90-degree angle to Juno, committed to be in a relationship. So there we've got the singleton versus the woman who is very proud of her relationship, although it's a little stormy. And so I think what we get there is another reminder of the world of one and the world of two. So this question is being asked of us during this eclipse, around this eclipse, now, even as we approach the eclipse.
And is it to do with relationship to self as well, Alison? And discovering our own inner authority and sovereignty?
It's got to be because of Aries, hasn't it, really? I think when we look at relationship, the world of two, somebody holds a mirror up and we can see ourselves in the mirror, so we get another aspect of ourselves. But we don't necessarily have to have that. We can do our own introspection and our own searching, and might be quite happy on our own with the dog and the cat. Anyway, so there we are with the chart. The chart talks a little bit about seeking redemption and some guilt. So what we may find is somewhere there's this guilty thing like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Or maybe I should have remembered his birthday. Or, oh no, I've gone and organised a night out with the girls and I promised him that I would see his mother. Oh no. So we're going to get these moments where, if I was on my own again, or if I had a boyfriend, this kind of thing coming up, I think. We've got also in that chart 3 sets of aspects with these outside planets, the trans-Neptunian planets or the dwarf planets. And I'm not going to pile a whole load of jargon at you because that's like, but I'll just sort of briefly touch on them. So we've got something called a grand trine in Earth. And that means 3 points around the planet Earth. So there's one there, and there's one over there, and one there. And in a grand trine, they all connect up and talk to each other, and they're very cozy. Now, there's something rather nice about a grand trine in Earth because it's all about cake, wine, biscuits, chocolate, everything that we enjoy, luxurious stuff. It's all very nice. The planets concerned here, Jupiter, great, yeah, lovely, very beneficent planet. Ceres, so she is about the parent-child bond. And then the last one is Orcus, which is one of the dwarf planets. And I don't just want to say Orcus, I want to say Orcus Banth, because I don't think we should miss the moon out. Banth wouldn't like that. These coming together do have an interesting flavour between them. They are talking about the thing you mentioned earlier, which is getting together to celebrate something being renewed, something passing through a process. And Ceres, most especially, passes through a process, helps us as we walk along. I think of that footsteps thing, I carried you because my footsteps are on there. Yeah. I think that's brilliant. So there's very much a sort of reflection of that. Vanth, especially, a big Etruscan lady, carries a bright torch and was well known for her guiding of the souls. So we've got this wonderful image of Vanth guiding souls. We've got Jupiter in all his beneficent, giving us confidence and helping us to broaden our horizons. And we've got Ceres there, who talks about the cycle of life and how these things, endings and beginnings, have to happen. Can't have a beginning without an ending.
And that's beautiful, isn't it? Because Jupiter is about to, well, it's already technically conjunct Uranus, which is this breakthrough in consciousness, this sense of greater expansion. And Ceres, just to remind everyone, because I talked about Ceres quite a lot in 2020, when it was in that big conjunction with Saturn, Pluto, the Sun, Mercury on January the 12th, 2020. But Ceres was the mother of Persephone. So you may remember that Persephone was captured, taken down to Hades, crossed the Styx, STYX, all very dark and scary. And her mother, Ceres, was absolutely distraught and cast the land as barren until she was able to negotiate. And that was winter, that became 6 months of winter, until she was able to negotiate the return of her daughter Persephone. Yeah. And so this is so much what you're saying, Alison, about going down to the underworld, but then coming back up. So it's very linked to the chart that you showed first time around. And Orcus, of course, is linked to the underworld too, as you showed on that chart. So there's this big sense of underworld, but coming back up to the light, as Persephone did. And also Jupiter saying, okay, we're now expanding our consciousness beyond a point that it has ever been expanded before. And I think that's very exciting.
It is. Yeah, it is. It's fantastic. And also, of course, we've just had the astrological new year. Yep. New beginnings, the equinox. So yeah, it is all looking a lot brighter, isn't it? Fabulous. So there's one other thing we ought to mention in this chart, and that is a very long-running aspect between Pluto and Haumea. This, we get some really large figures here for those who like the astrology. 13 hits, so they come together 13 times. We're used to like maximum 5. Gosh, that's a lot. 3. If I'm lucky, I might get a Saturn aspect just with 1 hit. So when somebody says 13, you think 13 hits. And the years, 6 years, these guys will be in aspect to each other. And that's a great thing, because Haumea is all about birth. And Pluto, as far as I'm concerned, go back to his old role, riches, and all the beneficial things that he gives. So we've got Pluto there ready to give all of his regeneration, and Haumea there ready to give birth. And so these two together, I think, are really helping us along with that birthing aspect and the newness. If I go back to when they had their conjunction, by the way, which was about the baby boomers. So they had a conjunction from 44 to 64, something like that, 1944 to 1964, 20 years. And that's when we were all told to have babies, because after the war there was such a depletion of population. Everybody needed to have children to stimulate everything again. And so they had a conjunction, and indeed they did exactly that. We had babies. We had baby. I'm one of them. You're one of them. Baby boomers. They're now on their quarter, and so therefore, when we get the opening square, so they're 90 degrees from each other, this is when all this gets examined. Was this a great thing? And I think population is becoming an issue at the moment, and so it is being examined. Was this a brilliant idea, having loads and loads of babies? I think so, because I'm here, you're here, we're great, so that's fine. Okay, there is another one which we can talk about on the next chart, because otherwise I'll just keep gabbling on. We've got Maki and Silesia and Quawa in a T square together, and I think they've got some very poignant things to say as well. So, but I'll do them on the next chart because they don't move between the two charts.
Yeah.
This setup, this T square, is going to be there for 26 years.
Wow.
I know. They're going from 2019, at the beginning of the pandemic, through to 2045. 26 years.
So this is a huge period of regeneration, isn't it? I mean, I'm personally very excited about Hermia, because I think in Scorpio, she's going to represent the cleaning up of a lot of pollution in the waters, of regenerative medicine, of, your beautiful passage in Starry Messengers that I mentioned in one of the videos, that I think she represents stem cell medicine. Yes. That was a magnificent paragraph that you wrote that I actually quoted in one of the videos. So she is hugely exciting at the time. And because she's so linked to Hawaii in the myth as linked to the Hawaiian goddess of fertility, and all that's being discovered about Lemuria now, and the potential rebirth of Lemuria, either re-emerging as the original land or re-emerging as the frequency of that time. Either way, I think this is incredibly exciting for where we're going as a kind of signpost for the next few years. So I think Homer is fabulous, and she's exactly in that square, isn't she? 1 degree of Scorpio to 1 degree of Aquarius for Pluto. So there's a huge kind of transformation and metamorphosis happening here.
Fantastic. It is. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And of course, Pluto moving into Aquarius, as far as I'm concerned, means we will talk to aliens.
Yes. Yes, I've often mentioned that. Yeah.
Brilliant. Great minds.
And it's interesting thinking about population as well. What you're mentioning is so interesting about those baby boomer years, Alice, because Maki has a...
I'm so sorry. I thought I'd done this. I really do apologize. I'm very, very sorry to everybody.
That's okay. So, but Maki has an issue around population as well, because during the late 1700s, 1800s, they were down to, and I believe this is historically recorded, I think it's even in Wikipedia, they were down to about 111 residents eventually. Yeah. Because of a lot of them had been taken as slaves by the European sailors, and there'd been a lot of disease and ecological disaster, which you talk about brilliantly in your book Starry Messengers, I have to say. You describe that. So they were in a situation of extreme depopulation, which via their understanding of the whole ecosystem, they were able to regenerate to a very healthy state again.
Exactly. And also when you look at Quawa, you've got a very similar story there. The tribe and the tribes on the coast of California, how they were done out of their land, tricked out of their land, etc., and population decrease. I think when you put those three together, there is also a story around Silesia that is probably not too well known. So Silesia is a Roman goddess, a goddess of the sea. Supposedly married to Neptune. Well, I'm sure she is Neptune's consort. But Neptune was not originally a god of the sea. Neptune was a god of rivers and horses and fields.
Good Lord. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So now, so when they looked at Poseidon and thought, oh, we better get ourselves a king of the sea because, like, you know, Greeks have got one. So they didn't take Cilicia, who was there anyway, as the goddess of the sea. They said, oh, well, we'll downgrade you and bring in a man. And he is going to be the king of the water, you know, and Neptune will be for the, you know, the god of the sea. And so I just wonder how Cilicia felt about that. You know, suddenly you make room for the man. So when these three are put together, you got Maki Maki with the terrible stuff that happened on Easter Island, and Quawa, the indigenous people of California, and then Silesia. Well, they've all been treated quite badly, really, or they're races of people. If they are a reflection of a collective unconscious, if deity is a reflection of collective unconscious, which I think it is, then we've got quite some some sorrowful stories there, and plight really, and poor treatment, etc. And I think one of the wonderful things that is coming out of these two charts, you see, I'm putting the end first now, is that this could be a time when the reparation is made. Mm. When we look at redemption, how can we redeem ourselves? How can this be put right? And so to see that this particular aspect is there for 26 years, well, it will probably take that long. Get it all sorted out. So, am I all right to move on to the next chart now?
Yes, absolutely. But I think also we are going to be moving through that process at different rates individually.
There's loads of time.
Yeah.
I mean, think how many times people's progressed planets are going to touch that, and so then they're plugging straight into that opportunity. Think how many times the transiting planets will be making formations around that and including it, or so it's like an orchestra, isn't it, or a play? You know, the music suddenly brings this particular aspect and these three planets into the center of the stage, and then it quietens off and somebody else takes over, and then it comes in again. Lots of time for that.
So we could be popping through individually well ahead of the 26 years, depending on our individual level of consciousness.
Definitely.
Yeah, because I think for some people they are going to be popping up to that higher level. Really, if they're not already in it very soon. Is my feeling.
I think the fact that these planets are here and that we're talking about them means that it is already open.
Yes.
And there are many people who are already stepping through the door or way above us. You know, these guys have been around for a while. So there's probably people who are already, you know, happy to step on and get up there and get ahead of the race. So we again go on to the total eclipse, total solar eclipse, and this is made different in as much as it has an exact conjunction to Chiron. So we've got Moon and Sun and Chiron all at 1924 of Aries. Well, so the way I read that is taking the sun, it's eclipsed, okay? So suddenly the light's gone out. And very briefly, there is an enormous amount of energy happening right around the planet at that moment. Cosmic rays are coming in. Lots of different things are happening energetically. But what I do see there, if the sun has been taken out of it, that, you know, the most positive planet there, suddenly we are left for that brief moment with Moon Chiron. Because the sun has been there and it disappears, suddenly we're bereft. Where's the light gone? So just for that moment, it will be as if we can suddenly feel the pain, suddenly feel the hurt, but we cannot cure anything that hasn't first been felt.
Yeah.
And so if you get the opportunity to feel that sudden, oh God, maybe I didn't think about it that way. Maybe I should have thought about it another way. then you're being given an opportunity to be aware of something or bring something up into consciousness, which is the only way it can be healed.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, I see that as an opportunity for us. Chiron is capable of bringing up all kinds of humiliation and embarrassment and wounds, but there's a reason he's there. We are human. We do come across these things. We do feel them. And it's nice to know that at that moment we are putting something into our wisdom process, because pain and gain are proportional. And so the more pain we have, we definitely make more gains in the wisdom scales. And so as far as I'm concerned, it's all learning and it's good for us.
And I see Chiron in that solar eclipse very much as a healing of victim consciousness, a healing of illness and woundedness, but particularly because it's in Aries, of any victim consciousness that we've lived through, possibly for many lifetimes, being healed at that time. And again, Aries stepping into our authority and sovereignty. So I see that as quite pivotal, quite transformational in how we see ourselves as humanity. So incredibly positive, actually, incredibly positive. And the great thing about Aries, and I have quite a lot of Aries in my chart, is that they just live in the present. There's a sense of, I know who I am, I'm doing this right now, I'm in the present moment. It's very simple energy in that way.
Yeah.
So there's a sense of understanding self in a very simple way. I know who I am. I know the contribution I'm going to make. I live in present time. So that is glorious, because our only power exists in the present moment, the power of now. If we're fretting about the past, worrying about the future, we're just leaking power. So I see that as an incredibly, incredibly positive total solar eclipse coming up for us.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's amazing. Brilliant. So good. Okay, so looking around at what we've got here. Chiron at that point is square to Ceres. And I think once again, we just need to think about the fact that if they're together, Ceres is helping Chiron work through his wounds. Or the wounds of the collective. One part of our unconscious collective is helping another part of our unconscious collective with these wounds. And so that's brilliant. The Grand Earth Trine is still in there, so we've got that, and that lovely sort of security, and the fact that we can do something with it. The best thing about Earth is you actually do something with it. And so that's nice. We can all have hot chocolate and wrap ourselves in a duvet, warm and cozy. Looking again at the Makemake, Salacia and Quawa aspect, the T square. Yeah, okay, it's still there. It is what it is, as I said before. I think it's about I'll just digress for a moment. When the discoverers named these planets, they did so with considerable thought, even though they researched quite badly and quite often didn't get that right. They nevertheless had a feeling behind it. They were being driven. And so Mike Brown, for instance, I don't know if you've ever covered this before, but his wife was pregnant.
Good understanding generally of mythology, hasn't he, broadly?
Yeah, but I think what was behind it was the fact that his wife was pregnant.
Yes.
And he used to get into bed every night and cuddle her tummy and feel the baby move and everything. And he was so overwhelmed and overawed by this baby growing that he really wanted to bring into the planets names for creation, creating, childbirth, this kind of thing, which he did. And so we've got Makemake because he was the creator god of Easter Island. I mean, probably he was the El Nino, La Nina weather oscillation of the Southern Pacific. But in doing that, he brought enormous amounts of food to the island. In one phase, he would bring lots of tuna, and they didn't plant their potatoes because they would get no rain. And in another year, they were not going to get any tuna because they were in the La Nina phase, and so they needed to plant the potatoes. He guided them into how to make the best, to generate and make the best out of what they'd got. So even their years of sparsity were compensated for by his help, because he said, don't pack your potatoes, you'll need your tuna.
You know, that has been an amazing piece of unique research you've done about El Nino, etc., and it's linked to Maki Maki. And what that really reminds me of, which is very linked also to Homer's symbolism, is being in right relationship with nature and the earth. You know, living in harmony with the earth's natural cycles. And also beyond that, actually, if we go back to Lemuria, it is said that that Lemuria actually exported its, possibly its people, but certainly its culture and spirituality, to at least 8 other geographies, including Easter Island.
Oh,
Yeah, because
wow.
originally, and Greg Braden talks about this, Cryon, a channel by Lee Carroll, has channeled the same information, but Greg Braden talks about it from his geology background, that there was originally a whole continent that was very large, that was Lemuria, including Hawaii, obviously, that's what's left of Lemuria, that actually included Polynesia, Easter Island, that spread out towards Australia, New Zealand. There was actually a very large continent there that is now probably under the sea. But that's a fascinating aspect because, again, that was probably the most perfect culture in our understanding that the Earth has ever experienced. But Maki Maki and Homer, the way you describe them, Alison, is very much linking into that being in rhythm with nature, being in harmony with nature, and therefore thriving as humanity when we understand the natural cycles rather than just pillaging and exploiting.
Absolutely. And it's the baby boomers talking about the Homer Pluto square, sorry, conjunction. The baby boomers who have done most of this. You know, during David Attenborough talks about during his lifetime, he has seen the planet change immeasurably, become so much more depleted, the population far too big, etc. So yeah, no, I think that those are really good points. It's there is time to correct this, to put it right. I think we've been in a very masculine phase, and masculine energy moves outward in straight lines, and it just goes forward and it wants to grow. And it says industrial growth and all kinds of growth are fabulous, and it doesn't matter how many resources we use up, or you know, we could deplete all of the planet's resources in this relentless pursuit of growth at any cost.
Mm.
That doesn't take into account the feminine, which is much slower. And so the feminine is gravity pulling in, masculine is solar radiation pushing out. And so the feminine wants to pull in and take time and let the planet catch up. But the baby boomers really far too big a demand to have far too many babies at once, meant that this is where we have got ourselves. But it's not a position that is impossible as long as we recognize it and we're prepared to go through what we have to go through in order to correct it and give the planet a chance.
And that's what we're in right now, isn't it? Coming back to Gaia, recognizing what has happened and saying, okay, from this point on, we are going to regard Gaia and all forms of life as sacred. We are going to have reverence for every living being, animals, birds, trees, plants, everything. We're going to be in this state of, again, Lemurian oneness, which is harmony with everything, you know, right relationship. And so that's what I think so many of us are recognizing now, to get back into a very different phase where divine feminine comes back in to rebalance any excesses of the masculine, and quite a shadow expression of masculine I think we've had as well.
Absolutely. Yes, no, definitely. I agree with you 100%. So as far as the personal is concerned, then for this final chart, we're looking at the solar, the total solar eclipse. Masculine is the energy that is eclipsed,
Of course.
and so therefore there is an opportunity there for feminine, to, because obviously if your masculine goes out, the feminine is there, The masculine is what happens to the feminine. The feminine is always there, so the dark is always there. The light happens to the dark. And so the Egyptians, lots of people around the Eastern Mediterranean area all kind of knew that. So you take out the masculine in that eclipse and the feminine remains always there, always ready. Just like Banth, really, with her torch, or Ceres waiting to guide the souls. And I think that is what we could find if we could only stop and just take this, and just, what are we doing? Stop. It's not that important that we, have the biggest industrial growth of the Western nations or whatever.
Times are gone. And isn't it interesting? I mean, that we will feel the effect of that eclipse for at least 6 months, won't we? Probably the rest of the year at least. And so that is so potent as a theme as we go forwards, that there's a big rebalancing here of divine feminine, divine masculine.
These are the last two eclipses on the Aries Libra axis. We move into the next axis, which is the Pisces Virgo axis next. So I think that it's a great time to use these eclipses as on the masculine axis, and just an opportunity to consider really, the balancing of the energies. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're seeing it also as very, very positive, because I see it as very positive.
Well, I do, because I think struggle is good for us. Struggle is incredibly good for us. I don't think we would just be very flaccid characters if all we ever wanted to do was just have everything fine. I want no struggle. I don't want to take on board any pain or anything like that. You cannot heal anything that isn't first felt. And so therefore it is about an opportunity. It's always about opportunity to do something about something that's gone wrong, that hurt, or was not fair, or something like that. And staying positive gives a much better experience of it, using the astrology to see why this happened, and then talking it through and saying, well, now that we understand this more thoroughly, how do we feel about reconstructing or getting a better future or doing something about it? That's the greatest gift of astrology, surely.
Yeah, and it's like the grit in the oyster that turns into the beautiful pearl.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
It's the hard aspects in astrology that produce real growth and integration and beauty. And someone with an awful lot of hard aspects in their chart, that's the way I've always viewed it. So a week or two of cruising wouldn't go amiss, but nevertheless, yeah, very much agree with what you're saying, Alison. But so we have a lot to look forward to this year. It's going to be moving at, I think, incredibly fast speed. It's going to be very eventful. So to stay in our stillness, stay in our center, stay in our hearts more than anything as we move through the rest of this year. These are watchwords, I think, that keeps it simple. If we go inwards, it keeps it simple. If we look outwards, it's dazzling in its complexity. So keep it simple, turn inwards. Fabulous, Alison. Anything else you'd like to share with the listeners before we close?
Loads, but we better not. I have a Gemini sun. You could be here all night.
Okay. Yes, and I have another call to go. So no, but really would like to thank you for your very unique research, because Alison truly does some very in-depth research, which is very different from what anyone else is sharing about the dwarf planets. And that's what really grabbed me when I first came across you. I thought, wow, this is a whole new dimension to some of the dwarf planets that I wasn't aware of before. So, really thank you for being such a pioneer.
I heard a very famous astrologer say that the dwarf planets had nothing to offer modern astrology. And I was so aghast at that, that I sat, this was 20 years ago, that I sat there as this little junior astrologer learning, thinking, what? No, that's impossible. What? These poor planets are going to get ignored? Oh, I've got to do something about this.
Someone who loves a challenge. Good.
I have to
Glad you
thank that
did.
astrologer for saying that, because otherwise I would never have been sort of energized into doing something about these poor guys that were going to get ignored. I suppose I ought to mention that I do have a book coming out. I've written a book, The Easy Way to Learn Astrology, because I think everybody should be able to do this, to have some astrological background, to understand a bit of astrology so that they can self-help and feel better about everything and understand more and be more patient and wise and all the things we know about astrology. So I've written this book, The Easy Way to Learn Astrology, and I have dismantled the way I was taught it because that was so confusing. And I've gone about it in a different way, starting with zodiac signs and then moving on to houses. And it just sort of flows more naturally. So if you've tried to learn astrology in the past, I suggest you get this book, because I believe that if you just buy this book, you don't need an astrology school. You can sit at home, you can learn astrology, and I just wish this gift were taught in schools, but I hope everybody gets the book.
Yeah, and increasingly we're just going to kind of download information rather than go through the slog that you and I did, Alison. But when is your new book coming out?
Oh, not too. It's about 3 or 4 weeks. So you can. It's. I think it's already on the Inner Traditions website in America. It's coming out with Inner Traditions. So just look on their website for the easy way to learn astrology. But I will stick it on my websites anyway. I've got one website which is entirely given over to astrology resource material that I've written for over so many decades. It just sits there. It's not updated very well. It may have spelling mistakes, but there's a massive resource and library of research that I've done over the years, and I just leave that there. And that's Midland School of Astrology. To get hold of me, you have to go to AlisonChester-Lambert.com.
Okay, fantastic. But I'll put Alison's links for those two websites underneath this video so people can easily access the information and dive deeper. Because, yeah, I just really want to thank you again, Alison, for all the work you've done to open
Oh,
this whole new vista and dimension and level of consciousness of the dwarf planets. You know, God bless you. So thank you.
oh, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for everything you're doing. It's just, oh, thank you.
Well, we're each playing our part. We each have a specific piece of the puzzle, and the jigsaw is not complete, even without the smallest piece. So I always like to think that. So, yeah, we've each got a role to play. God, God bless you. Thank you again, Alison, for everything you're doing and sending love to everybody out there that's listening to this. And I hope it's been really helpful for you. Bye for now.